initially, I felt very stupid after the game because I thought that was quite clever from Xhaka to just provoke Trent Alexander-Arnold enough to get him booked, and then you leave him unable to really put a tackle in on Martinelli because he might get sent off.
Which may well have been what the intention was.
Yeah, so that he probably thought he was being smart, but then there's the whole intangible atmosphere kind of thing, but then the statistics, pre-Xhaka's yellow card and Trent's yellow card at the same time, Liverpool had only had 4 shots, and I don't think any of them were on target. Post-Xhaka yellow card, they had 17 shots.
Yeah.
Quite a few of them were on target. So it did kind of shift the momentum of the game. But yeah, if only we could quantify how much the cop sucking the ball into the net actually mattered.
Can we?
No.
They're working on a model, I'm sure.
Damn it. Opta are on it, yeah.
The XD, expected decibels.
I did think that like a lot of the narrative was sort of angled at the beginning by the fact that obviously Arsenal are very good, they're top of the league. I didn't think that Liverpool were as bad as people were suggesting. I think as soon as the first goal went in, everyone was like, here we go, it's Arsenal doing their thing. I thought it was quite a balanced game where Liverpool got caught out in a couple of defensive situations, which we know is what they're not very good at this season, right? They play such an aggressive line that they have to be super on the triggers of when the line pushes up and drops back. They also have to be really aggressive on the opposition ball players to make sure it's hard for them to play it over the back line, and I think that's where they've been let down a little bit this season. But in terms of what they were doing in possession, I thought they were doing some good stuff, and I think that was then exacerbated by this idea that they had nothing, and then suddenly this event happened. And then they got good. I don't think it's quite so simple as that.
I always find it interesting to talk to you. And I used to find it interesting to talk to Alex Stewart about these things too. You being someone who dispassionately analyses football from the perspective of a tactician, looking for what's happening on the field and or imagining what the kind of coach instructions are in order to try to understand what's happened, right? But then there are some things that, because as Reuben said before, some things you can't quantify. The Anfield crowd being one of them. Whether a player's having an on day or an off day, as an example of. But Liverpool this season, I asked you about it over the weekend, and I asked you what's going on with them, and you gave me like an on-pitch response, which was accurate, I thought. Yeah. But what it missed was I think, that they're mad, right? There's like a psychological element to this, which is not easy or possible really to quantify in the data or to be completely certain about. We can only guess, I suppose. But it doesn't make sense to me that this team can look as shaky as they did in moments in that game in the first sort of 30 minutes or so. And they did have good moments too, but they, as Reuben mentioned before, at times they look like the team that beat Man United 7-0. At times they look like the team that's lost how many games this season. That game totally could have gone either way. I don't know. Do you think they're in their own heads or something? What is the possible psychological scenario?
Weirdly, I do think momentum mattered in that game.
Yeah, because
I think the reason why Liverpool enjoyed the second half is because Arsenal were doing something different, which is they weren't pressing as aggressively and causing them those problems. So whenever any of these things happen, I'm always thinking about the game state, because we've seen Liverpool being great in games this season. We've seen Liverpool be awful in games this season. I can't just simply explain it away by being like, well, this is just a psychological thing entirely. No. What I think a lot of it comes down to is when they are able to do the things that they're really good at doing, then they're great. And when teams find those aspects which they struggle with, they're really not great. And I think that maybe the on-pitch explanation that I gave to you when we talked about it over the weekend was that Jurgen Klopp has a very, I don't want to say one-dimensional because that sounds patronising, but he has a very set idea about the way that he wants his team to play.
It's a consistent approach.
Yeah, and they've lost a few players this season. They've got players getting older. So Virgil van Dijk's had an ACL injury and recovery in that period. Things like that impact the way that they play. And if they don't have the players who are able to play at the peak level that they were at in the previous seasons, then you start seeing a drop-off. And it's one of those things as well where it's not just a slight decline. It's like either you can press aggressively and you can stop opponents from targeting your high line, or you can't. And if you can't, then they just go over the top of your back line over and over again and cause you problems isolated against the back line itself.
When they were like really, really good, they used to almost get caught out with runs in behind their defence constantly. And then Van Dijk would just put his arm up and the flag would go up and they'd be like, well, that was close. It's like, no, it was offside. That was the intention. And now if that just works less frequently, then it creates loads of problems.
I remember-
Margins,
it's a bit
the
like
fine margins.
it is, and there is also an element of the 7-year not curse, but you know how at Mainz and Dortmund similar things happened where energy levels sapped because the squad had reached the end of a kind of cycle. A lot of players were pushing 32, 33, and then all of these tiny little things kind of add up. Basically.
I remember Liverpool fans used to get really annoyed because people would think that opposition teams had been better because they would remember the amount of offside chances that they had against them. And that, I mean, that's on the one hand, that's true, right? If, you know, an offside chance doesn't count. It was not a legal way of trying to score a goal. But
It was illegal.
it was illegal, exactly. But if you start getting those fine margins wrong, suddenly all of those chances do become legal. So it's almost a sense in which that was a harbinger of what was to come. Because
Harbinger?
Harbinger.
People say different things, don't they?
Soft G, I reckon.
You think soft G?
Harbinger.
Steve Hankey?
Harbinger.
I think it's Harbinger.
Harbinger.
Yeah,
Is it?
get wrecked.
Harbinger.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.